I was on mute. Guys, great to see you guys. Welcome everybody to the Savvy Investor YouTube channel. Welcome to those that are brand spanking new to our group. For those that don't necessarily know me, my name is Mike Ponte. I'm the founder of Savvy Investor and longtime Canadian real estate investor. We got another session, another Wealth Wisdom Wednesday. And for those that are brand spanking new to our Savvy Investor YouTube channel, this is where we talk every week about a brand new topic, all to do with real estate investing. We got great guest speakers. Sometimes I'm able to chat as well. So for us, it's just about talking about real estate. And so for us, we are very, very excited. We got another great session for us today. And I'm not sure if anybody else is noticing. Are we noticing inflationary costs kind of going up? Are we noticing, interest rates, utility costs, insurance? I'm not sure if anybody else is noticing that. I know I am, but it's been kind of interesting to say it lightly. And not to mention as well, we've also got, all these increased costs, and we've got government intervention that's actually happening, which is impacting our overall ability to offset some of those costs with maybe the ability to raise rents as well. So with that being said, for our investors that are seeing this impact as part of their cash flow strategy, and for some of those that are wanting to become full-time real estate investors, this could be a process where it's delaying that from happening. So we have a couple of decisions we have to make. So number one, we can just throw our hands up in the air and just give up and just say, oh, well, that was a nice fun go. And so, maybe I'm just going to try something completely different. Or we just have to be a little bit more creative in our approach. Let's be honest. Us as real estate investors, we have to deal with obstacles constantly that are being thrown at us. So it's really, really important to talk about maybe different strategies to maybe implement into our business. And we are talking about one specifically today, which is a renting strategy with student rentals. So kind of instead of renting it by the unit, why not rent it by the room? And this could be a really great strategy for our savvy investors, especially for those that are maybe looking at ways to offset that and maybe add a different type of cash flow strategy into their portfolio. Could this be a good strategy? Possibly. But I thought we'd bring an individual out, a longtime investor, great guy, Erwin Szeto, to join me and share some of his amazing wisdom as well on this subject, as he is using this as part of his real estate investing strategy in good old Hamilton, Ontario. And he's even recognized as Mr. Hamilton himself. So again, very, very excited to have him. For those that are maybe in the dark and have not seen Erwin Szeto around, he is everywhere. He is highly recognized in the investing community as a real estate investor, and has also pivoted into the stock option side of the business with his platform, Stock Hacker Academy. But Erwin is a long-time real estate investor, an award-winning real estate investor with the Real Estate Investing Network, Canadian Real Estate Wealth Magazine. He is an educator, and in his spare time also has a real estate investing group called Infinity Wealth Group, or IWIN. Whew. And when he has a couple more minutes, just a couple more minutes, he also has an amazing podcast called The Truth About Real Estate Investing. It is ranked as one of the top podcast channels in both Canada and North America. So if you haven't checked this out, do so. It's a great podcast. He's got amazing speakers, amazing topics. And again, he's just a really, really great guy with a wealth of information that he's sharing to the investing community. Okay. So very honored to have him and join us today, as he is a busy beaver, as you guys can see. But again, very honored to have him participate and join us today. So with that being said, before we get started, just a couple friendly reminders. This is a YouTube Live, guys, and I can see your questions and comments. So again, get those keyboards clicking away by asking questions, please, and sharing your comments. And I'll do my part to make sure we get these questions answered, either through myself or with our guest speaker, Erwin, to join us. And to help you guys kind of warm up those fingers, if you haven't had the opportunity yet, please do me a favor. Please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and more importantly, hit that notification bell if you don't mind. It helps those wonderful algorithms to help support the growth of our channel. And we're definitely trying to really grow our channel. We're looking for 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. So help us get there if you guys don't mind. So thanks for that. So let's get to the topic at hand. And more importantly, I want to welcome our guest speaker, Mr. Erwin Szeto. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm great.
Great. Thank
It's
you so much
getting
for
warm out
doing this.
here.
I really appreciate that, buddy. It's really great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you too, Michael. It's been too long, and I'll see
For
you in
sure.
a few weeks.
I'll see you in a couple of weeks for sure. So, for those that are kind of maybe not aware of who you are, Erwin, maybe if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and a little bit about your story, and
Mhm,
obviously how you got the name Mr. Hamilton as well. So, maybe if you
mhm.
don't mind sharing a little bit about yourself and how you got started in this.
Sure. For folks who don't know who I am, I married Cherry Chan, my accountant. She's way more popular and more in demand than I am. So, and that's like one of the best wealth tips I can give anyone. If you can marry your accountant, do you know how much easier it is to get your mortgages?
That's a great way. That's a good thing to remember. Actually, that's great.
Well, you know the challenges of gathering your finances to prepare them for your mortgage person. So that's not my job. That's my accountant slash wife's job. So I have a CFO in my household that's responsible for our accounting, our cash flow, and getting us lots of inexpensive money from the banks.
Love it.
But
Love it.
yeah, my name's Irwin. I'm not that different than many people. I remember graduating from university and then opening up my paycheck, and there was not enough money there after paying taxes and CPP and my girlfriend and my car. There was like no money left. So then uh, finally figured out a side hustle around the age of 25 and got into real estate investing. So that was back in around 2005. And and then that was more like just to I was young, I wanted to make money, I wanted to grow up and be rich. But then that time when after my daughter was born, I remember laying in bed. Like being bad, like you're not supposed to like lay in bed like, in my phone,
Mhm.
and I couldn't sleep because the question popped in my head: how much does it cost to send a kid to university? Right, this is 2014, so I googled it. Found an article in the Globe and Mail, and for everyone listening, guess for today, or guess whatever it is for you when your child turns 18. What does it cost to send them to university? Like Michael,
Hmm.
your kids are in university age.
They are. They
How,
are.
how,
Yep.
how much does it cost?
So for my daughter, it is roughly 15,000 a semester.
Oh my god!
But that's including room and board, right?
Semesters. That's twice a year you have to pay that.
Oh yeah, it's pretty
Oh my
expensive, right?
god.
So
Okay.
yeah. So
So
so we got Jose saying 120 grand. So I'm trying to
right.
it's probably not far off, right? For us anyway. So yeah.
So then my immediate thought was, I I need a solution to be able to make that kind of money because I did not want to add more years onto my retirement age.
Yeah, exactly.
So I had a problem. Need to pay for this kid, and then I immediately bought her a house. She was 3 months old at the time,
Awesome.
and that was worked out well. I paid around 245 for that house. I had to do some renovations. It recently appraised for $1 million. Um, so yeah, my daughter's net worth is somewhere around 700,000 or something like that, right? And she's
Love
8
it.
years old.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Good.
Right.
So you got into kind of really focusing on obviously legacy would be part of it for your kids, I guess. And then secondly, it's just really about your lifestyle and trying to make sure that you're able to accommodate your kids' lifestyle for university is kind of what some of the main objectives of why you got into real estate investing to begin with, would you say?
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to make money, and then it got serious when I had kids. It got much more
Yeah.
serious, and like the problem became much more glaring.
Yeah.
And also just being a student of real estate like yourself, I know what the bigger problems are down the road, right? And then to me, the risk of my kids not having a home to live in,
Yeah.
to not be able to afford their home when they're old enough to like when you and I were old enough to get a home, it was not easy, but it was reasonable. Like it was doable. I don't know how this generation or the next one, or the one after that, is supposed to get into a house, right? So
Yes.
again,
Agreed.
problem, get a solution. I don't mean my daughter's probably not going to live in the house that she owns in Hamilton,
Yeah.
but she has an investment vehicle that will help her pay for whatever comes
Yeah.
down the road in order to be able to get into a property. If she wants to go to medical school, if she wants to, if we're so lucky that she can, qualify for the Olympics, something like
Yeah.
that, then
Yeah.
we have the financial means to do so.
Yeah. And it's very similar. Like I know for myself, when I got started, it was a very similar story. Or when it's just like I had kids, and instead of kind of doing an RES or RESP, even though we do, or we did, we had a house, we had a property, right? And so we bought a property for each one of them, and they were just generating income. And again, that's their kind of, at some point in time, if they ever want to buy their house, that's kind of their property over time. But it started exactly in the same mindset. It was just like, you know what, we needed to do something a little bit different because everything's gone. It's that support mechanism. As life with kids is very expensive, as you've referenced, right? So yeah.
Oh yeah, I didn't know as expensive as what you're talking. I don't know what your kids are learning.
Sorry to disappoint you, buddy. Well, I don't know. Maybe my kids are going partying a little bit more often than I don't know. So you know what? There was a million different strategies, and you know what? I share this a lot. We've kind of started investing back in the days. There's so much more information now than there ever has been, and like for us, we had our groups with Rain and other different things, and there's so much more information than there was back then. And the one strategy I think you chose amongst many of them was going into more student housing, if I'm correct, right? And so can I maybe ask you, the question is, why did you choose more student housing versus some of the other different strategies that are there?
So it's a pivot. Like everything, we test everything. We're open-minded, and then we course correct when we need to. So, for example, at the time in Hamilton, we were doing small multifamilies, like duplex, triplex, fourplex, fiveplex, whatever, right? But then the city started cracking down on zoning. So if you didn't have permits, then if you didn't have permits for the use and legal use for the property to be whatever it was, then they were cracking down. So you did have to, the city would fine you until you return the property to its legal use, which usually meant evicting tenants. So your customer, you're getting rid of them, and you're getting rid of all those rents as well, right? Not a good business model, because, and then some people novices might think, oh, just renovate the property appropriately. Well, to bring a 100-year-old property up to code will be extremely expensive. Extremely, like not even like because, for example, as soon as you take out a permit on one of these properties, you have to do everything to bring it up to code. So it could be hundreds of $1,000s of renovations if you're allowed to do it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So very cost prohibitive, not a good business case. So then we had to pivot, and the pivot was student rentals, because we could legally operate based on Ontario Superior Court. So I'm in Ontario. There was an Ontario Superior Court case where, with the student rental, where the city, specifically City of St. Catharines, was trying to shut down a student rental, but the Ontario Superior Court judge ruled that these students, they signed the same lease. You can't discriminate them, and they operate as if they're one, right? They all know each other. They're all responsible for the rent together and the utilities, right? So the judge deemed them as one. It's like, okay, so we have precedent that we are allowed to operate these businesses. And so then to renovate a property to be a student rental, much easier than any sort of multifamily. First off, we don't have a second kitchen, for example.
Right.
So it's a massive cost savings, right? Actually, we don't want a second kitchen because that takes up the space of a bedroom. And what do I rent in the house? I rent bedrooms.
Bedrooms.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So then we'd have like 4, 5, 6 bedroom homes that we rent them out by the room. So it's kind of like wholesaling, right? Kind of like wholesale retail. Instead of renting out the whole house, right? Like today's values, today I can rent out a whole house for around $2,500. I can rent it out individually to students for around $3,700, right? I get over $500 per room. Yes, it is more work. It's a different tenant profile. But because we're talking about Hamilton, my tenant profile of students, these are rich kids from out of town, and they have mom and dad's credit card, and the parents guarantee my rents. So compared to local tenants, much easier tenant profile in terms of many things. Collecting rent, they're not jaded individuals. You won't find a professional tenant. I actually think I'm going ahead and answering a lot of your other future questions. So I'll stop there.
No, you're
feel
good.
free to ask more.
Because you know what, this is exactly it. And it's just like you're getting right into this right now. It's just like, people look at that perception. It's just like, student housing is just like, ooh, these guys are going to be partying it up, holes in the wall. There's going to
Mhm,
be
mhm.
drunken debauchery in the property. There's repairs and damages. And that's kind of all the negative stuff that, that's
Mhm.
the first thing people sometimes think
Yeah,
about. But
yeah.
there's a lot of positives. And I think you've alluded to some of those things is,
Mhm.
higher rental income, number one. And that, to help offset some of these inflationary things, it's
Yeah.
something you definitely want to look at. Again, potential co-signing with the bank of mommy and daddy as well, which is not a bad thing, right? And so maybe you can share some of the the goods, the bad, the uglies of the strategy, and what are some of those pros and cons to this investment strategy
Mhm,
that for
mhm.
those that are watching right now, that they're considering. What should they know about the pros and cons?
So first off, I'll just say that uh, novice, amateur landlords who don't take this as seriously as I do will generally have more problems than I do. No
Yeah,
different than any landlord, doesn't matter where in Canada, where in the world. If you don't take it seriously, you're going to have the tenant will teach you what you did wrong, which is
yes,
not
they will.
something I want to do.
Yeah,
So we screen, for example. First off, we screen. We ask students like, "Oh, what are you taking?" Right? Because kids love to talk about what they're taking in school,
yeah,
right? And so one thing is we always focus on the tougher programs. We want students in the tougher programs. For example, I have property in St. Catharines as well. So, for example, this one house I have, we've just been lucky, and we've always gotten students who are in concurrent education. So they're in the teachers college program, but they have to maintain something like an 85 to stay in it. So if a student has to maintain an 85 or else lose their access to their program, like they don't really have time to goof off. They have time to goof off, but not
yeah,
an excessive amount of time to goof off, right? They're very serious about school, right? Because if they lose their grade, they're out of the program,
yeah,
right? So it starts off with screening for quality tenants. Um, And also, just take a step back. I focus on university students because typically they come from families with more money, and often they stay longer as well. Because I think every university kid does a 4-year program, right?
yeah,
So I want them year 2 or 3, and then I want them to stay at least a year, 2 or 3 years. And the nice thing again about students, no professional tenants. They do turn themselves over, which is good for Ontario because then we can raise our rents because we have
yeah,
rent control here.
yeah.
Right. And
So,
again, it's really important that because of the towns I invest in, the students generally are a better profile for income and how nice they are and their view on life than a lot of the locals are.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you're really, when you're making your property selection, you're picking areas that have a higher caliber university to have that better quality tenant
Mhm.
profile. But when you're considering student housing, that I would assume that's part of your search criteria when you're looking for properties is, I'm looking for these types of students. And it's actually, that was some great insight, and Jose referenced the same thing. Great, good insight about the courses and the classes that they're taking as well. Is there specific classes did you actually do some of that research yourself just to learn more about it, or they just kind of share that information with you about these are some programs that we want to maybe be renting, or these are some of the programs that we want to have in the back of our mind. So when a student says, I want to be a doctor, that would
Yeah,
probably
they're probably
be,
pretty serious.
yeah.
Right.
Is there specific courses that resonated well with you guys when you're doing your tenant selection?
Generally, anything that's hard to get into.
Hmm.
Uh, and I because I have a lot of clients, I'm lucky that I can network often with other people who and share best practices, and
Right.
uh, and then some of the things that just make sense. For example, nursing students. Generally, they're not going to trash your place,
Right. Right.
right? I had a client who had a lot of success with religious studies students.
Yeah.
Right? All the kids were going through to become like priests type,
Mm.
leaders of church.
Right.
Not they weren't they were really good people.
Right. Yeah.
And then a little bit off path, I have one client that had a lot of success renting to kids on the varsity swim team. So again, they have to eat well, regular training, and then a side bonus was they were showering at the pool, so they didn't suck up her. resources at home.
Isn't that hilarious? That's so
Right?
funny. That's
Yeah, and
awesome.
they're great kids, like great kids, and the fact that they were young, healthy, and strong, they were actually they were great neighbors as well. They would help like the elderly neighbors, like take their groceries into the home, shovel sidewalks, shovel snow, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and also, uh, in my experience, my clients have shared with me. Several clients of mine have shared with me they love their tenants, right? Their student tenants. I can't recall any of my clients saying that about their non-student tenants, that they love certain tenants. So it's not all perfect, but then no strategy is all perfect.
Mhm.
It's really, it comes down to the individual. Um, but yeah, I think everyone should try it. And
Yeah.
yeah, but my experience has been good. I enjoy it. And I don't plan on changing anything anytime soon.
That's good. So I got a question here from Jose here. So how about renting to a group? So you've identified individuals, but say a group. Say, hey, Irwin, you know what? We're a group of 5. We're all amazing. How do you facilitate that? And do you screen each individual separately, or how do you manage that?
Often they're coming to me as a group. So I only rent to groups. We had to break some of those rules during the pandemic when demand was low, but otherwise we only rent to groups. So they sign because they had to be comfortable signing one lease,
Right.
and we let them know you have to be comfortable with each other uh, because you guys are living together.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're responsible, right? And also, if they have any gaps. So, for example, let me take a step back. The pandemic was hard, but what also happened was a lot of the supply disappeared.
Hmm.
A lot of student landlords either sold their property or rented it to a regular family,
Hmm.
right? So then a lot of supply disappeared. So then, as a business owner of student rentals, I have something that's in low supply, right? And the demand hasn't changed.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
and then my rents have all gone up. So yes, I knew this would happen. I knew the pain wouldn't be pleasant. We had some students not go to school, and so I didn't get rent in some situations. But I knew this would happen. The pendulum would swing the other way, and completely in my favor.
Yeah.
So, for example, if a group does not have enough kids, or an individual comes with say, "Come bring a group," because we're going to prioritize a group because in our experience, they're more likely to get along. Because if the group gets along, that eliminates most of your problems.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And Jose says awesome. And I agree with that, because at the end of the day, there's that commonality. They want to have good relationships. And if you're putting individuals in, they don't necessarily know each other. There's probably more challenges that can happen from that, because they don't necessarily know each other. Right. So
Right.
that's good.
A and that's a challenge with when you rent to college students, because again, they're low they don't, have the same budget.
Yeah.
So, for example, a lot of my students, they tend to meet in residence,
Mm,
and that's how they form as a group. Then they come and rent my house 'cause, from my understanding, pretty much everyone gets kicked out of residence after first year, unless
yeah.
you're working there, because the school needs to make money, and
Yeah.
they won't get a student unless they can guarantee them housing in the first year. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. That
Mhm.
makes sense to me, actually. So again, they built relationships. They're in student housing to begin with, and now they're looking for a place for themselves. And that's kind of how that transition actually happens. So what about some of the cons that happen with this investment strategy? So, there's lots of
Oh,
positives. We talked
how
about
long do we
the
have?
drunken debauchery, and I'm sure we can be here all day and all night. But at the end of the day, I think it's important to kind of maybe understand the pros and cons between both sides. What are some of the things that you've seen, or what are those things that can happen? So
A lot more education needs to go in up front. For example, because some of these houses I have like 7 tenants, and then I don't just have 6 or 7 tenants. I have their parents as well. So
yeah.
then we have to educate them on how to communicate. We need one person. All communicate to one person, and that one person communicates with us,
Right.
right? And then usually they don't even communicate with us. They actually communicate with my handyman,
Hmm.
right? Your first call is to my handyman because I tell them like, I used to say these hands are
Right.
for using a BlackBerry. Now they're for using an iPhone. I don't swing a hammer. I don't know how to fix a toilet. Uh, but a lot of these kids have never been homeowners, never lived outside the home before.
Yeah,
So there's things they don't
exactly.
know that they need to deal with. Uh, for example, um, kids don't realize what a leaky toilet means, right? What it means for the expense. So on our utility bills, on our leases, we cap we cap hydro at $350, usually $50 a head per kid, right? So we tell them like we're happy to fix any problem, but you have to let us know. And the worst problem that can happen is a running toilet.
Yep.
Right? So we tell them that. And then they're like, oh, again, education. You have to educate. And then we haven't had a problem since. Right?
Yeah.
Because they understand they're on the hook. And also, kids are usually pretty good about they're pretty they care about the environment. Right?
Yeah.
So they understand what that problem is. But we have had all sorts of crazy stuff. I've had cops show up at my properties twice. One was for a party, but this was hilarious because my tenants. It was funny because I didn't meet them. My property manager put them in. Right. I remember going one day on an inspection to inspect my property, which I recommend everyone do. You need to check on your property once in a while. I went and checked, and I saw all this beer paraphernalia. Not like drinking beer paraphernalia, but like flyers and like holders of flyers. And that's what I asked, and I met with one girl, and she was an attractive girl, and then but she was the only one that was home. And then I asked my property manager later, like, what's the deal? What's all this beer stuff like Coors Light, Budweiser, Blue, Labatt Blue, like flyers and stickers and coasters and stuff? He says, "Oh, they're all promotional girls for alcohol." And what do girls look like who promote alcohol? Right? I'm not going to say
Right.
anything, but
Yeah.
everyone can kind of guess. So this was the scene when the cops showed up at my property. I wasn't there. The students just told me about it afterwards. So the cops show up because I have a not so friendly neighbor who doesn't like students. The cops show up and like there's about four of them on the driveway with their boyfriends. The music, they have some music, and the cops are like, "We got called for this."
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't loud music, but they had music. This neighbor just calls for everything. And the girls are like, they know how to communicate with men. So they're so excited to see the cops. Like, oh, hi, how you doing? And like the cops are like, I can't believe we were called for this. Could you just turn off the music or go inside? And like, oh yeah, no problem. And like that was it. That was my first experience with cops going at my property. The students told me about it afterwards, and they were
Right.
just laughing. They actually enjoyed the opportunity to converse with police. Now,
That's
another
hilarious.
time when the police showed up, that was not so good. Two of my tenants got into a fist fight. These were young women who got into a fist fight, and the cops were called. So we found out, some of the parents called us and like, what do you really expect us to do? Your friends came together. All right, we're just the landlord here. We provide the home. Like your daughter and the other lady's daughter, they got into a fist fight. All right, you called the cops. One girl got hauled away in handcuffs. Right.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So then the house got together and voted one girl out, who they deemed to be the troublemaker, and then they replaced her as well. So then I wasn't even out any rent.
Wow.
But then they had the conversation with the parent again was to educate. What do you expect us to do?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
All right.
So there's a couple questions that are popping up here. Like I think these are all great ones too. And Jose's coming up with this one. So when it comes to the lease, so say for example, you're bringing this group together, right? Are they individual leases by person, or do you do it as a group? So it is a group.
I only do group leases. It's a non-starter
leases.
for us. Yeah.
Okay. Got
And
it.
it gets easier if your property is nice, and like if you can set the terms, which is what I'm always trying to do. I'm always trying to be in great areas. I do a lot of safety stuff in my homes. Again, I always try to do everything to make sure it's in my favor, so that I
Right.
have always negotiating from a position of strength.
Right.
So kids often don't want to sign individual leases. Sorry, they want to sign individual leases. We say there's no negotiation here, and that's part of the Ontario Superior Court ruling, right? Because I can't if I have individual leases, then that's a rooming house, and that
Right.
falls under a different level of zoning and Ontario Building Code requirements.
Right. That makes sense. That's
Mhm.
good. So I got another question for Andre as well. So how do you get parents on as guarantors? Do they sign the lease? So again, there's going to be some people that get to your point. They're the first time moving out of their house. Do you get parents? Like they may have never had credit scores done or anything like that. So how do who's covering that? And how would you get payments from them if the kids don't pay, which is another great question. So, am I using my money to party, or am I using my money to to pay their rent. So I don't know if you can share any insight on some of these things. Erwin.
We've done a mix. We've done a lot of post-dated checks.
Mm-hmm.
I still kind of like checks. We also do some e-transfers where we set up like a Gmail address with the home address, with the street address at Gmail, so then we can track EMTs that come in.
Right.
And then when we meet with the kids, we give them the lease, and also each kid gets a page for a guarantor form that the parent has to fill out and sign.
Mm,
Yeah,
good.
and so the parents don't sign the lease; they sign a separate guarantor form.
Great. So let's just say, and I don't know if you've had this experience, tenant doesn't pay, or the student doesn't pay. How do you collect from the parents? Are you just communicating with the parents to saying, hey, they
Yeah,
didn't pay rent? And then I would assume, as any
that's
good
pretty much
parent,
it.
they will
That's
get
pretty
it
much it.
squared away,
Because parents
right?
are generally budgeted for their kids to go to school, so the
Yeah.
money's usually as they budgeted,
Yeah.
uh, and just some passive aggressive threats to put stuff on their credit is usually enough for a parent to cough up the money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
it's rare that a kid is maliciously holding back rent. It's
Yeah.
usually just something they forget.
Yeah. Makes sense. Good. And second part to this one, what about international students when it comes to guarantors from parents there? Have you had to have any situations with international students as well?
In my experience, I prefer not international students. Uh, the reason why I prefer kids that are more local is because they will clean the heck out of that property when someone's mom is coming. Right? If it's an international student, another thing about moms showing up at the property is that they'll often educate as well. Oh,
Right.
you need
Good
to
call.
use, I don't know, this cleaning solution, or this is how you change a light bulb. I
Yeah.
know you I know you plan to be a future doctor, but this is how you clean a toilet, right?
Exactly.
So there's lots of benefits to having parents come visit once in a while. Uh,
Hmm.
so I have rented international students before. Not a big fan, just because they know less about maintenance than a local would. Because again, their parents aren't there to provide any sort of mentorship. Uh,
Right.
they left behind a ton of stuff. Um, as part of our negotiation. So I find this be pretty common is we let them know we have no recourse with you. Is there something you can offer? And then the
Right.
kids, they seem to know that the market is around, from what I've seen, my experience, they seem to know that the market is around 6 months rent up front. So we've actually collected 6 months rent of cash up front before.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah,
Amazing.
there's no guarantor. But also understand that international students, their plan is usually to stay in the country. So they do need to keep their nose clean if they're ever if they want to become a citizen, get a credit card, get a car loan, buy a
Yeah.
home, right?
Yeah. And a lot of reasons they do want to stay there. In some cases, learning the language as well, right? Well, a lot of cases they know the language before they come in, but
Hmm.
yeah, that's good.
Hmm. Yeah.
So let me ask you the question. You look at some of the different strategies there, and just based on your experience, or when, for a lot of people that are watching this live or even just on the recording, and they're like, you know what? There's a lot of inflationary costs. You just said something earlier that, hey, you're renting it by the room, you can make more money. Do you think that's a better process, a better investment strategy than maybe conventional, buy and hold, investing by the unit versus renting by the room? Like, what's your opinion? Is it better to go one way or the other? Or is it better to do student housing versus more full unit rentals?
So first thing is I'll never tell anyone what to do. And I'll never tell anyone what's a good investment, bad investment. I'll just share my own experience.
Share your
Like
opinion. That's all.
for example, my dad's made a lot of money buying new pre-construction condos in downtown Toronto, right? Uh, there are what I think is good, better, worse for your own situation. For example, my dad's busy. He's a doctor. He doesn't need cash flow that badly. Right?
Right.
I don't make that kind of money. So I'm willing to do more aggressive things in order to earn more cash flow. And yeah. So and my properties are buy and hold. My intention is to hang on to them forever.
Yeah.
Being where they are located, they are in wonderful locations for students or for regular people to own,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not opposed to. Actually, no, I've. It's more again. The bigger question to me is more about being strategic. For
Yeah.
example, about about midway, 2020, for example, as expected, student rentals were doing really poorly as rental property, and no different condos in major cities were doing really poorly. I actually stated at that point, I think the best thing to buy right now is a condo in an urban center or a student rental,
Yeah.
right? Even though like most of my portfolio is duplexes these days, is I've little basement suites in almost all my property. But what is the great? But is what is the best opportunity at the time, right? And today, it's still the best opportunity right now. I think is specifically student rentals, uh, because again, like I mentioned, um, the demand is the same or going to get higher.
Yeah.
It's basically a recession proof business
Yeah. Makes sense.
because all this like student populations only grow,
Hmm.
and when you have recessions, people go back to school to get retrained,
Hmm.
right? So then I have more customers for my business.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's just another tool for the toolbox, and I would totally love a property. I could have a basement, buy my bungalow, basement suite it, build a garden suite near university,
Yeah.
right? Because even if I don't rent it to students, even if I rent it to like other people, I'm a monster. The school places such a demand crunch, and this
Right.
causes a supply crunch for rentals. So it actually pushes up the rent for everything else,
Right.
right? So, and I actually like markets that have student rentals. So I have a college, for example, even though I don't want to rent to college students, like for example Belleville, I don't want to rent to those students. But I like the fact that there's massive demand for rentals because that'll make what my product more in high demand.
Yeah, makes sense. That's it. So let's get to the there's a lot of great questions. They keep posting them, guys. I'll get to them. I promise you that they're great. So keep posting along. So I think one of the other pieces and one of the fear factors that come with student rentals is the summer months. And so
Mhm.
you've got a period of 2-3 months where there's potential vacancy here. So it's kind of a two-prong question, I guess, or when is this, or sorry, three-prong is number one, what do you do with, what about the fear of vacancies in the summer and how do you kind of manage that or budget that? What would be kind of the number um, for reserves to deal with that? And do you have to deal with that? And the second part to this question is also the maintenance component. Yes, there's good cash flow, but I'm assuming you do have more turnover, I would assume. And then with that being said, there's also more maintenance that has some erosion to that extra income. So maybe you can talk to it from a vacancy during the summer sessions perspective, and how do you manage that part? And then the second piece is just the maintenance component when
Mhm.
turnover does eventually happen.
Okay, so again, I focus on being at the top of my market in terms of location and finish. So then again, I want to be in the strongest position to negotiate. So then
Right.
summer's vacant is not like feel free to not be there. You're still paying me rent. The lease is for
Right.
12 months. For our markets that we invest, the lease starts May 1st and then ends the next April, right? So it's 12-month lease. So even if you don't plan on being there, and also like think about that, like the kids are usually gone most of June, July, August, but it's at the beginning of the lease. It's the beginning of my lease, like, and this is the agreement. Like,
Yeah.
if you want September, come talk to me in September. This won't be here.
Yeah.
And then again, I set up everything to be, and again, to show demand. For example, I'll book showings like 5-10 minutes apart.
Yeah.
I want the groups to see each other. I want them to see the competition. Because the challenge is novice, like new students, like who haven't done any research, they
Hmm.
might think they can negotiate. But any kids who've actually spoken to upper years, they know that they have to hustle
Yeah.
to in order to, and compete. So the smart kids show up with checkbooks, right, ready to sign leases. Like that's who I want. And then the demand actually got so strong, we actually started marketing our properties in December for May 1st leases because
Hmm.
that's when the keeners really came out, right? I don't want the
Amazing.
stragglers. I want the keeners,
Yeah.
right? Because if you're keen, you're probably keen at everything. So if you're a keen student, you're probably going to be a pretty good student, right? So we started. So yeah, we're again open minded. Always
Brilliant.
cool to test stuff. we started marketing lease vacancy rentals in December for May, and then and then again, like I said, the pendulum's completely tilted the other way, swung the other way. Everything's in the landlord's favor right now.
Yeah.
And then you asked about maintenance. So my properties, we've always furnished partially. We provide a dining table with chairs, a wall-mounted TV, because I don't want a new TV coming in every year,
Right.
because that'd be rough on the wall. So I provide a wall-mounted TV that's already wired in. I provide a couch and a coffee table, right? I have friends that go even further. They'll provide a desk and desk chair and a bed frame, right? Because that's often your greatest source of wear and tear is the coming and going of furniture, right? I think anyone who's moved into a property or moved out knows like you're going to scuff walls and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing, if you can avoid a lot of that maintenance, and if you're providing that, obviously that's actually yet another perk to wanting to rent in your units, right? Just because you've got some of that furniture already in place is something they don't have to bring in as well, right?
Yeah. And again, like I said, some friends, they have like all IKEA. It's like they know exactly what SKUs they need.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Some students really like it. Like they don't have to bring anything.
Yeah, that's great. Question here that came from Andre as well. Do you always kind of invest, I guess, from a cash flow perspective? Is that your focus, or the appreciation side of things? So what's kind of your model, Erwin, and how do you manage? What's your strategy when it comes to looking at a property in the Hamilton area in a university town? Are you comfortable with appreciation, or are you looking for cash flow?
I like every source of income. I'll never turn any of them down.
Good answer. Great answer.
So Andrew, my properties are in again, this is deliberate. I've deliberately bought in areas that both students and regular families would want.
Right.
The more customers for my property for tenancy or for resale that I can get, love it. Right.
Yeah.
So I get plenty of I get way more appreciation. It's not even close. I get way more appreciation than cash flow. Right.
Yeah. No, good.
That's just what happened in Ontario. And because my properties are, an hour to an hour and a half away from Toronto. So then it's just been the ripple effect, the population growth of in Toronto. Right. Because I have properties in St. Catharines. And St. Catharines, for anyone who knows, weather's lovely. It's very affordable, nice communities. Right.
Yeah. Very good. I got a second part to that question from Andre as well. So can you actually say, for example, a tenant doesn't pay rent? And again, this is worst case scenario. So you got the parents as guarantors. Is that impacting their credit report, or is it going to impact the student's credit? That's the question. So
we've actually never had to get to that point.
Yeah, I was going to say it's got to be pretty severe for that to happen, right? So,
but these days with Front Lobby from Landlord Credit Bureau, we would do that. We do that to both of them because we can. I have a signed guarantor form and I have a signed lease, and the kid's 18.
Yeah, that's perfect. That answers the question. So hopefully that answers your question, Andre. But that's a great question for sure.
And then just to zoom out of that, my experience with tenants is those who have bright futures generally are very protective of their credit.
Yeah, for sure. Good. Very good. Very, very good. Awesome. So let me ask you, you started this 2005. Is that right? Is that when we started this?
That's when I bought my first property. Yeah.
Very cool. Very good. And it's always kind of interesting. I love sharing stories, because for us that have been doing this a long time, we always have a good story, right? And so my question to you is, do you have a story that has resonated well for you, that you've learned as kind of lessons by going into this game called real estate investing from a student housing perspective? Maybe something that you would have done a little bit differently. And I always share the best experience, or the best way to learn a mistake, is from other people's mistakes. And so with that being said, is there something that hit you or that challenged you that people can learn from?
I'd say it's not all about cash flow. So if I could go back, it's I don't know how to say it because people are so sensitive these days. I had this one group that was all same sex. I won't say which one.
Sure.
They were in a non-competitive program. The challenge was that the leader of the group that we met, he was a rower. So like he fits one profile. and he had Olympic aspirations. He actually did go to the Olympics. I have a
Yeah.
tenant that went to the Olympics. It's pretty cool. And then, but we didn't meet all of his friends, and our timing was off on when we made the property available. We were too nice to the previous tenants. They were like waffling whether or not they're going to stay or not. So we didn't advertise the property in time. So then we were left with the scraps, right? In terms of quality tenants. And so they were messy, they were loud, they were hard on the property. So looking back, I think the better thing would have been just to rent it out regularly to a nice family versus dropping our standards for our tenant, for student tenant. Yeah, because you have to be picky about student tenants.
Yeah, that's good. Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And just to share about what program they're in, I call it the Jerry Maguire program. They're going through for sports management, and like sports management, what's that? Like like they want to be sports agents,
Right.
and like okay, and there's like a brand new program, like so many all these red flags. So any student, what are the requirements to get in?
So trust your gut is what you're saying, kind of, right? So
and just have high standards. Just have high standards. Stick with it, and then if it doesn't smell right, then just pivot. It's not the worst thing to rent to somebody else for a while. It's not worth the trouble for difficult tenants.
I couldn't agree with you more. And that even just falls in conventional rentals as well. Make sure you're picking the right tenant for your profile that you're looking for. You don't want to be having a big project for yourself, right? So let me ask you now, you kind of alluded to this as well, as go out to see your properties. And it's about systems. And so, and I think this is really important for you. You've highlighted a couple things is like, start advertising in December to start to find tenants for May. What systems did you implement into your real estate business that maybe has made the real estate business run smooth? Is there anything specific that you've done?
Again, communication up front. The single lease is key. So they know that they're accountable for each other, including any excessive utility use. The guarantor form's really great. Lets them know that we're serious. Lets the parents know we're serious.
Yeah.
I've always gone above and beyond. I haven't mentioned it yet. I've always gone above and beyond on the safety mechanisms within the property.
Right.
For example, if I can interconnect 4 smoke alarms, I will. I'll have some properties have 1 smoke alarm per bedroom. It's a little overboard. I put an egress window in the basement, right? One property I have egress windows in each of the rooms, right? I have fire separation, fire rated drywall, and Roxol insulation. So it's all I have the fire separation I need, as if it was a separate apartment, even though I don't need to. And then again, this goes to my strategy that I always want to be in a position of strength when negotiating. I remember one time a parent came and he said, "Oh, my daughter picked out a house, but I saw your for rent sign. I want to have a look." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, come on in." And so I gave him the tour. I said, "See, look at the window. I made that bigger so that someone can crawl out. This drywall, fire insulated." And then I made some noise. Like you can hear the noise has been retarded. That's proper use of the R word, by the way. And then he's like, "My daughter's not renting that house. My daughter's renting here."
Right. Yeah.
Right. Because safety is a selling feature. Right?
Yeah. And I think that you've just referenced this is you've done a really good job, obviously trying to focus on that top tier clientele base for your tenant profile, which is probably part of the process to make things a little bit smoother for yourself, right? You don't necessarily need to deal with maybe as much maintenance, but I guess part of it is if you are looking to maybe take something a little bit less from a tenant profile, then there's probably more risks that might be involved with some of the more common thoughts in regards to student rental. Would you agree? Yeah.
Yeah. And then again, this isn't for everyone. It is a bit more. This is way more work than a pre-construction condo, but this is a strategy I can scale. And that's why we choose to be, we're never been afraid of doing the harder stuff in order to get more rewards.
Awesome. Good. What about property management side of things? Is that something you do, or do you have a property manager? Or maybe you can share a little bit about that.
We do a bit of a hybrid format. I have a personal assistant in my work. But again, our tenants know to call our handy person first. There's really no reason to ever contact us unless they have a rent issue. Our handy people don't deal with the rent,
Mm,
right? But almost all their issues are usually related to the property. Locked myself out. Uh, I don't have a window screen.
right.
You know, the sink is clogged, right? Nothing that Chair, my wife, and I can deal with. They always make the call to the handyman. And the really funny thing was, remember those girls that work in the beer industry? My
Right.
property management did not have any troubles with going to those calls, right? He actually had like an apprentice who was like 24 years old. Like they called and he was there, and sometimes I don't think he even charged us, right?
Wow. That's funny. Um, this is yet another really great question from Andre as well. What about insurance for rentals? 3 plus, I guess. Really, is that change things? Does it add more risk? How do you deal? How does an insurance company look at student rentals?
It's more expensive. Well, also because I do commercial insurance,
Right.
and it's fully disclosed to my insurance company what it is. Uh, it's the insurance that I use is actually specific for student rentals. I go through Hub. I forget who they just broker it. I forget who actually gives my insurance, but
Right.
um, it used to be Lloyd's. It's not Lloyd's anymore. Anyways, I pay over $200 a month, and I get over $2 million liability.
Perfect. So I think that answers your question, Andre. Is like really the insurance is not really a big issue. It's obviously more expensive than residential, but this is kind of more of a commercial. It's a way to it's more of a commercial type of insurance policy that you'd be getting, right, Erwin?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it is literally a commercial insurance policy.
Perfect.
It actually
Good.
says it right on the first page.
There we go. Perfect. Good. So, one last question. So I've got people like, you know what, they're watching this live and they're going to be watching the recording and they're just like, you know what, this is an interesting concept. There's more cash flow. They may be open to starting to look at this as yet an opportunity because they may have got properties that are close to universities or colleges. What advice would you give to investors that are getting started in this investment strategy and are wanting to get or considering getting into student housing? What would be the advice you'd give?
I'd say take it seriously because I find in general people try to get away with the minimum on doing a lot of things. So I think people can get the gist that I've invested heavily into doing this a high value system in the way that I
Yeah.
invest. You have to know your market in terms of what the students want, in terms of location and finish. Uh, and again, like I mentioned, I've rented to college students. Not a good experience for me. So again, depends on your student. I had the lady on my podcast, Anne. It's her story, but she rented to police foundations students. So they're going to college to become policemen, police people. I don't know, law enforcement, whatever the term is. And she told me that they damaged every single piece of drywall in the property. So there's no intact drywall left in the property when she saw it. And she was livid with them, and she told them, "You better fix this, or I'm going to tell your school what you did." And they fixed it. So they re-drywalled the whole property. So yeah, it's not always pretty. Um, my experience has been a good one. Like my biggest problem has been a flood, which has nothing to do with the fact that those students were in there. It's more
Right.
just surface water got into my property. Know your zoning. Oh my, again, take this really seriously. I've
Yeah.
gone down and met with the local fire inspector as well, and I told him what I wanted to do. How do I do this correctly, right? And I asked him as well. How many people have come down and met you with you and asked you the same question? He goes, almost no one. You know how many student landlords there are? You know how many landlords there are, period? Right?
Yep.
So I met with Peter DeBeer in Hamilton at his office and took notes. And he was very appreciative and very happy to give me his time on how to run a legal, safe property.
Yeah.
So yeah, take it seriously. Network with other student landlords because then you'll
Yeah.
learn. Like you're gonna need support. You're gonna need
Yeah.
contacts for like fence person, handy person, whatever. Right. So yeah, take it seriously. I treat this like a business, and yeah.
That's
been great
good.
for us.
You know what? Awesome information. I got some really great nuggets. I hope you guys did too as well. Lots of valuable information. So thanks again for jumping on here, Erwin, to share some of your information. If they want to learn more about you, Erwin, where can they go? What's your recommendation?
I'm easy to find on social media. I'm everywhere.
Mhm.
Erwin Szeto. My name is very unique. You can find me on LinkedIn very easily, or Facebook or Instagram. I have my own podcast where, real estate's meant so much to me and my family.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll just share a quick story. I was playing the Ungame with a mastermind of mine. Not really playing. The Ungame asks those kind of like uncomfortable questions, and and then we have to go take a turn answering the question. So the question was, if you were to pass today, what would your 3 regrets be?
Yeah.
And then, typical entrepreneur, I don't like being told what to do. So I actually spun the question around and said, one thing I do not regret is I know my family's set up if I pass today, right? Like Michael, I'm pretty sure you probably say the same thing. Your family's
It's
set up if
exactly
you
the
pass
same.
today.
Exactly the
Yeah,
same. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Exactly the
And
same.
then I almost challenge that to everyone out there listening. Like, can you say that? And then what are you willing to do about it? Was that even answering any question that you anywhere close to
You
my
know what?
questions?
It's a great way to conclude it, to be honest with you, because you know what? It resonates with me a lot in regards to knowing what your why is and what you're doing. And if you're finding a challenge or an obstacle, there's always a solution to do it. It's just taking the time to really map it out. And I think that's something that resonated well with me. And that's why I got into this. And it sounds like it's a very similar process with yourself, Erwin. So
Right. Oh, and I'll share one more thing. So my podcast can be found at the Truth About Real Estate Investing show for Canadians. It's all so you can find it wherever you want, and YouTube, Apple, Spotify. I'm everywhere. One other thing I want to say is we're talking about investment real estate. Anywhere you can make money, you will find people who only care about making themselves money. So I can't emphasize enough, be careful out there. Trust, and verify,
and
right?
verify. Yep.
You have to verify because there's lots of sharks out there. Tons of sharks who are just looking to take your
Definitely.
money. Yeah.
Definitely. Great advice. You know, Erwin, thank you so very, very much. I can't thank you enough for sharing some of your wisdom and some of your knowledge about this great topic. Lots of great nuggets. I hope you guys all enjoyed this as well. So I just want to, as we kind of wrap things up here, just want to thank everybody that was able to join us for tonight's training session, and hope you found value to it as much as I did. Like I said, it was great having Erwin here to share some of his insight when it came to student housing as well. Again, please do me a favor. If you haven't as of yet, hit that subscribe button for us as we continue to grow our Savvy Investor channel, and it'll keep you updated on new videos as we post them online. Regardless if you're watching this live or through the recording, please post your questions or comments in there because I am very, very responsive to getting those questions answered. So again, guys, thank you for joining us. Erwin, always a pleasure to see you, sir, and hope to have you back on here again in the future, buddy.
Thanks so much. I think you have my wife coming on before you have me again.
Yeah, I think you're right. Thank you guys all for joining, and I will see you guys all next Wednesday at our next live training session. So have a wonderful evening. Bye now.